Welcome. We've got over a month to kill. It's June 22nd, second day of summer. Training camp doesn't get started until July 29th. So it's officially the dead period. It's officially time to bridge the gap. I promised you a lot of content, and this is one of the original pieces. I'm back from Mexico, ate a lot, drank a lot. Congratulations to my friends Justin and Abby. That was their wedding celebration over there just outside of Puerto Vallarta. But now I'm here to talk 49ers. And guess what? Tomorrow, since I'm currently in Nashville, I'll be at George Kittle's tight end U, Vanderbilt. That's going to be cool. Obviously, we'll have some content on the channel from there. There's obviously going to be some stuff coming straight from the tight end U account, but I don't think that you're going to see many reporters at tight end U tomorrow. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, wherever you are. It's going to be another scene out here in Nashville. It's going to be really hot too, but those guys don't care. Those guys are going to be out there working on the craft in the practice field just to promote that tight end position. And this event has gotten so much more publicity year after year. I believe this is now number 3 of tight end U, and they're raising money for a good cause. So we'll be covering that tomorrow out here in Nashville. Other news, I don't know if you saw it. This is some sad news. RIP to the Goose, Tony Siragusa. Just about 30 minutes ago, news broke that Tony Siragusa died in his sleep at the age of 55. Super Bowl champion for the Baltimore Ravens. Played for the Colts throughout the 1990s. Big defensive tackle. He was later an analyst on Fox, I believe. He might have done some time on CBS as well. But Tony Siragusa, who I'm sure most of my viewers are familiar with, has passed away. So RIP to him. Today, we're talking Trey Lance and his time to throw. I know that all of you love Trey Lance content. And the reason that we're talking about Trey Lance and time to throw is, well, because last year, from snap to release, Trey Lance averaged 3.37 seconds, which actually was the longest period of time of any quarterback in the NFL. Now, this is not necessarily bad. This is primarily a stylistic stat. And it's stylistic, well, because of this. Take a look at Trey Lance against the Houston Texans. This is in Week 17. Now, there's not going to be a throw on this play, but this is a play that does exhibit the new dimension that Trey Lance brings to offense. It's a third down. Lance bails the pocket. Lance has long strides. Lance gets right there near that first down marker. Now, I believe they ruled him short, but the point still stands. Trey Lance has wheels, and these wheels right here, as you're going to see the pocket collapse and Trey Lance get away, this is what is jacking up the stat down at the bottom, 3.37 seconds. Now, does Lance have as quick of a release as Jimmy Garoppolo? Of course not. And Garoppolo last season was a 2.58 seconds from snap to release. That was the third fastest time in the NFL. Lance is not going to learn how to have that rapid fire motion overnight to match Jimmy Garoppolo's in that regard. That is out of the question. But what we do need to talk about is the fact that Garoppolo was third fastest in the league and Lance was the longest in the league, which tells us that this is going to be a markedly different style of 49ers offense in 2022 to play to Trey Lance's strengths. Because you see Lance, he's more in the Josh Allen comparison as far as time to throw goes. Allen, 2.89 seconds, which was the 5th slowest time from snap to release last season. Patrick Mahomes was 7th slowest at 2.87 seconds. You want to go to somebody closer to Lance? Well, Lamar Jackson was 2nd slowest at 3.09 seconds. So you could tell the commonality between this guy on the 49ers, the Bills QB, Josh Allen, shout out to the 559, Fireball, California, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson. All these guys have legs. All of them can run. And you go back to Josh Allen's rookie season in 2018, he was at 3.20 seconds, which was the slowest in the NFL. Oh, boy, Trey Lance, slowest in the NFL at 3.37 his rookie season. As you can tell, Allen has sped it up a little bit, but all too much, from 3.20 to 2.89. So the gist of this is that a mobile quarterback is going to be buying some time behind the pocket. It's not going to be snap and release to the first available receiver. Now, Kyle Shanahan obviously likes the rhythm offense, and he'd prefer for Trey Lance to do that on every down. But there's a reason why the 49ers spend so much draft capital to acquire a quarterback who has that added dimension of legs. And that's because in the modern NFL, that dimension is needed. This is an overarching NFL trend. Edge rushers and freakish defensive tackles, see Aaron Donald, are overwhelming offensive lines. And yes, that includes the 49ers O-line, which has been a good run-blocking O-line over the past several seasons under Kyle Shanahan. But the pass protection hasn't been great. Number 26 in pass block win rate in the 2019 Super Bowl season. Number 26 in pass block win rate in 2020. They got better in 2021 over the first half of the season, but then injuries happened. And when the 49ers were forced to resort to their depth, you saw what happened. They struggled throughout all of the must-win games late in the season, including that one against the Texans where Trey Lance had to bail out and run for close to that first down. But they struggled in week 17 or week 18 against the Rams. They had to overcome some pass protection issues against Dallas. They definitely overcame some against Green Bay. And then finally, the 49ers were torpedoed by pass protection issues with Trent Williams playing on a high ankle sprain in an NFC Championship game against the Los Angeles Rams. So the truth down on your screen played out against the 49ers last year. Edge rushers and freakish defensive tackles are ahead overwhelmingly of offensive lines right now in the NFL. Simply put, the athleticism of some of these edge rushers, and, you know, if you look at Aaron Donald, I mean, he's chiseled 305 pounds, right? I think he's around that much, and there doesn't seem to be an ounce of body fat on him. He's extremely quick. The proliferation of athleticism along the defensive line, this has been something happening over the past 10 to 15 years in the NFL. It has far outpaced what's happened along the offensive line. Now, the 49ers have tried to counter this by getting exceptionally athletic offensive linemen so they can at least run block. But the problem is that these defensive linemen around the league are freaks, and they can also bull rush. So they're quick off the ball, but Aaron Donald can also maul you on the bull rush. So if you're lighter, to be able to combat the athleticism as an offensive lineman, you're going to be susceptible to the bull rush. And the 49ers have been susceptible up front to power rushes from their opponents. So in general, pass protection around the NFL is at a significant disadvantage. And yes, that includes the 49ers. All the metrics suggest that for the 49ers of the past several seasons, especially once they lose one of their starters. And they have lost to injury over the course of the season, but now they've lost two starters that they have to replace heading into 2022. And Laken Tomlinson at left guard, Aaron Banks should start there, and Alex Mack, the center who retired. Expect Jake Brendel to start there. So with pass protection being at a significant disadvantage, we have seen the rise of the buy time to throw quarterback in the NFL. Josh Allen is a buy time to throw quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is a buy time to throw quarterback. Lamar Jackson obviously can move. He's a buy time to throw quarterback. And initial results tell us that Trey Lance has the tools to be a buy time to throw quarterback, longest time, average time from snap to release last season. You know, what's really interesting, because we look at the 49ers and this, hard pivot from Garoppolo, who obviously was the third fastest. So he was all about the quick release last year. We can say that Lance and post ACL Garoppolo are fundamentally different. Got a little spelling error down there. Forgot in the typo, post ACL Garoppolo. But go back to 2017 for Jimmy Garoppolo. He was at 2.66 seconds from snap to release in 17 over that 5-game stretch. And then over that 3-game stretch before he tore his ACL in 2018, Garoppolo's at 2.96 seconds. He was almost at 3 seconds. So when we talk about what Kyle Shanahan may or may not want at the quarterback position, I don't think that he wanted exactly what Jimmy Garoppolo was bringing to the table, the quick robotic release over 2019, 2020, and 2021. I think the whole time Kyle Shanahan preferred to have mobility at the quarterback position because his dad succeeded most when he had Steve Young, when he had John Elway, both pocket passers who had mobility. And then you look back at who the 49ers signed to a long-term contract, and Jimmy Garoppolo back in 2018, they traded for him obviously toward the end of 2017. You see a guy who actually was holding onto the ball a little bit longer than he did later in his 49ers tenure. And the delineation between holding onto the ball longer and getting rid of it quickly was the ACL tear. Right before the ACL tear, Garoppolo was holding onto the ball nearly 3 seconds. He was buying time. That touchdown pass, one of the nicest throws of his 49ers career, season opener 2018 to Dante Pettis. That was an off-schedule play where he obviously held the ball much longer than 3 seconds. But after the ACL tear, we saw Garoppolo and the 49ers offense move to almost exclusively a bang-bang rhythm offense. Snap, release, yards after the catch. So the mobility for Garoppolo probably was compromised. The 49ers offensive line was obviously not performing at a, top half of the league level in pass protection. And the 49ers decided that the best way to overcome that would be the quick game by facilitating yards after the catch. But Kyle Shanahan's dream, I think, it's always been clear, and he actually said this before the 2022 or the 2021 draft for the 49ers picked Trey Lance. He wants a quarterback that throws like Breeze and runs like Lamar Jackson. So he wants the quarterback to be able to execute the on-schedule stuff, but he recognizes that on-schedule stuff might be covered by the secondary, or on-schedule stuff might not be possible because defensive lines are overwhelming pass protection in the NFL right now. So because of that, he needs a quarterback who can buy some time, and that is the quarterback who can run like Jackson, who obviously has the higher time to throw numbers. So this is something to watch with Trey Lance this year. Where exactly will Trey Lance fall on this spectrum? Last season, he was the slowest in the NFL, 3.37 seconds, kind of like Josh Allen was the slowest in the NFL in 2018 at 3.20. Allen is now the fifth slowest, so he's still a time to throw kind of quarterback, but he has tightened up the release, and I think he's gotten a little bit more familiar with the Bills' offense, so he's brought it down a little bit, and I would expect something similar for Trey Lance moving here into his second season under center and his first full season starting for the 49ers in the NFL. All right, let's answer some questions. Those of you just coming in, why don't you go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're talking Trey Lance today. I could talk about other stuff as well. I could pop open Matt Barrow's article. He wrote a good one today. There it is, 49ers spring practice takeaways. And every player review from OTAs and minicamp, Matt actually went through every single player. He really did. From OTAs and minicamp on the roster, wrote a little blurb. So check that one out on The Athletic. I'm sure that's something that will give you some good mileage here as you try to pass the time before we hit July. And then you still have all of July before the 49ers even think about reporting to training camp. However, tomorrow, as I said, I'll be at tight end U. I'm here in Nashville. Tight end U is going to be hot. I'm talking, they hit 100 degrees here in Nashville today for the first time since 2012. So here we are in 2022. We got 10-year heat here in Nashville. The airport hit 100 degrees about 2 or 3 hours ago. It might be a little bit cooler now, but it's 4 p.m. It's still hot outside. I mean, I did my swim inside today because I just got back from Mexico. It was hot there. Got a lot of sun. Didn't want to deal with outdoors today. And you guys know how much I hate swimming inside, but I did it today because you have to have a chiller in the water if it's really hot. Otherwise, that water gets steamy. Nobody wants to work out in a hot tub. So sometimes that indoor pool is better. All right, let's talk. I am going to answer some questions. Comment section relatively quiet. How do I feel about Danny Gray? Jamie Strong watched some highlights, and he looks really fast and kind of used as Debo was. Well, that was at SMU. So Debo Samuel is being used in a really physical way at the NFL level. And that's really different than being used in a potentially physical way at the college level, especially SMU. That's the lower college level. Now, Debo Samuel is an absolute truck. You saw him next to Javon Kinlaw at one of the 49ers OTA practices. He's wide, he's built, and I do not mean that in a negative way. That's the type of body that Debo Samuel has that allows him to be able to dish out contact at a record level. I mean, we haven't seen any receiver in the history since this has been tracked deliver the prolific yards after the catch production that Debo Samuel has delivered for the 49ers ever since he joined the team out of South Carolina in 2019. Danny Gray, meanwhile, he's smaller. He's 5'11". He'll be 180 to 190. He's not going to be trucking people at the NFL level, but he is certainly faster than Debo Samuel. So these are going to be complementary pieces. The 49ers are going to use Danny Gray to try to blow the top off the defense. Where I think that you're saying that he might get similar usage to Debo Samuel is those little quick screens, little tunnel screens, right? You can throw Danny Gray a quick screen if that defense is giving him way too much respect for the deep pass, right? If the corner's 10 yards off the line of scrimmage, toss it really quickly to Danny Gray, get some blockers out in front of him, and you can see him accelerate that way with the ball in his hands. But it's not going to be like Debo, who's just going to be lowering his shoulder and running people over like an avalanche moving down the field. This is more of a speed game for Danny Gray. And the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan need that speed piece in their offense. Josh Allen would be the 49ers QB if they didn't trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. Very possible, although at the time, Josh Allen, boy, he was still a big-time project in 2018. Coming out of Wyoming, Fresno State didn't even offer him a scholarship, and he was a farm boy out there in Fireball, California, not too far from where I grew up in. And, when the 49ers played the Bills, that was Thursday Night Football in 2020, I was driving from the Bay Area to Shaver Lake because that obviously was while the 49ers were exiled to Arizona. So we weren't even at those games. I was just covering them all from home. So I'm headed from San Francisco down to Shaver Lake. On the way, I stopped in Fireball, just pulled up to the football field, started talking to Josh Allen's former coach. I go around, I saw the field that he played on. His numbers retired out there. The gym is named after Josh Allen's grandpa. I mean, really dusty, small farm community, not too far off Interstate 5, about an hour away from Fresno. And, I mean, you just get the feeling of where Josh Allen is from, and it's a very under-the-radar place. And he wasn't playing high-level competition. I mean, he did take the high school circuit by storm, but Fresno State, they were eyeing some guys from Southern California. They were eyeing some guys from the Bay Area. They overlooked Josh Allen. Went to Reedley College, which is a community college in the area, and then he transferred to Wyoming. But even at Wyoming, he was only completing about 50% of his passes. So even the NFL was a little skeptical about Josh Allen, although the Bills did roll the dice on him in that first round. And now, as we see, it paid off, but it took a little while to pay off. So just back to Andrew's comment, would the 49ers have picked him in 2018? Would they have had the foresight that the Bills did? It's impossible to tell. And the quarterback position is so tricky because for every guy that does work out, there are a handful of guys at least that don't. The 49ers wanted to go the sure path. And Kirk Cousins might have been the sure path. Kyle Shanahan has even said that if the 49ers didn't trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, they would have made a run in free agency at Kirk Cousins. I think Kyle was intent on getting his tenure off to a decently winning start. And he knew that if he had drafted a rookie quarterback, like Josh Allen, it would take a few years for that quarterback to truly hit his groove. So that's why the 49ers had the placeholder in 2017 and Brian Hoyer were initially looking to sign Cousins that offseason when he became an unrestricted free agent. And instead, they traded for Jimmy Garoppolo when that fell into their laps. I don't think they regret that at all. They've been to two NFC championship games and a Super Bowl over the course of the Garoppolo tenure. While he was healthy, they won. When he wasn't healthy, they didn't win. But they saw the need to upgrade, especially from an availability standpoint. And when we talk about the availability standpoint, well, if you're already going to upgrade in that regard, if you're already going to spend all that capital to trade up, you also might as well get what you initially thought you were getting with Jimmy Garoppolo. And that's a little bit of mobility, a little bit of escapability. And Garoppolo, before the ACL tear, had some of that. Well, Trey Lance has that times 1,000, right? Because he's one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the National Football League. All right, another question. How was Fred Warner at OTAs? Fred Warner, I mean, he was mainly on the sideline at OTAs. I mean, the 49ers, a lot of these veterans participated in some drills, hung out at practice, but when it came to 11-on-11 ball, these guys would sit it out. The 49ers have no need to run these guys, especially all pro type veterans, through drills that could end up in injury. So we got a better look at some of the other linebackers, and even the younger linebackers who we did see, those guys were all playing without pads. They're not really hitting, right? So training camp is going to be the time to see Segun Olubi, Jeremiah Gemmel. Those are two undrafted free agents for the 49ers. Fred Warner is going to be back in the mix. It's going to be Al Shire and Greenlaw this year. Maybe both of them playing and vying for a long-term contract from the 49ers. The linebacker position is going to be undergoing some change in all likelihood just due to salary cap constraints after the 2022 season. So I'm really excited to see what happens with Al Shire and Greenlaw in their contract years here in 22. Thomas asks, David, how do they replace DJ Jones' run defense? With blitzing, a single player like Kinlaw, or platoon alignment? I think absolutely you're going to need Javon Kinlaw to deliver. The reason they picked him in the first half of the first round in 2020 was because they saw him as a centerpiece type player down the road, especially once they couldn't retain players like DJ Jones any longer. It was actually a minor miracle that the 49ers were able to retain DJ Jones for the 2021 season, and that was probably because of injury issues in 2020. But then he put together a fully healthy 2021 and priced himself out of the 49ers market. But it is clear going back to 2020 and the trade of DeForest Buckner and the subsequent pick of Javon Kinlaw that the 49ers anticipated that Kinlaw would need to play a big role on that defensive line. Kind of like Aaron Banks is going to need to play a big role on the offensive line. If your second-round pick is not delivering at left guard, well, you're probably going to be in trouble at some point because sixth-rounders, fifth-rounders, undrafted free agents, they're not going to cut it at the most important positions, and you ultimately can't pay everyone, right? Laken Tomlinson at over $13 million priced himself out of the 49ers market. He's with the Jets. Well, the way that you replenish is through the draft. That means that Aaron Banks has to get the job done. Same thing, DeForest Buckner priced himself out of the 49ers market. The way you replenish is through the draft. The 49ers spent the first-round pick on Javon Kinlaw. He's going to have to get the job done. So no Buckner, no DJ Jones. Both of those guys, high-price signings elsewhere. In the case of Buckner, obviously a trade and then a signing elsewhere. And now it's time for Javon Kinlaw to pick up some slack. But Kevin Givens is still on this football team. They signed Hassan Ridgeway. Kerry Hyder's on this team now. Hyder, I know he played all his snaps almost exclusively on the edge at defensive end for the 49ers in 2020. But this is a player who could play anywhere and actually told me that he's more comfortable on the inside in 2020 before Nick Bosa and Dee Ford both got hurt. So these are adaptable weapons between Ridgeway, Hyder, Kevin Givens, obviously Javon Kinlaw. These are all guys that you're going to have to find a way to mix and match with the ultimate chess piece being Eric Armstead. He kicked inside last season and has gotten fair credit for saving the 49ers season. Defensive end by listing, defensive tackle by trade last year for Eric Armstead. The fact that he can do both, the fact that the 49ers can maneuver inside and out, well, that's going to give them a better opportunity to replace somebody like DJ Jones. At OTAs, I even noticed Charles Omenihu taking some snaps on the inside. Now, those weren't in run situations. That was for pass situations. But that's what Arden Key did last year, right? Defensive end prior to his time with the 49ers, NASCAR package, toss him inside, get to work against some guards. Boom. This is why Chris Kasarik gets paid the money that he does. He's probably the best defensive line coach in football because he's able to pull the right strings with the pieces that he has. Is there any more positive news of progress with McGlinchey? Nothing new, but McGlinchey is looking good and he's going to be ready for training camp. Trey Lance success will be determined by how the offensive line protects. Isn't that what happened to Wilson's demise in Seattle? Well, yes, of course. I'm a big offensive line guy, and they need to protect to some extent, right? You can't have a complete sieve of an offensive line. But at some point, you have to go back to the truth that I mentioned earlier, and I can pop this open on the screen. And that's that edge rushers and freakish defensive tackles are overwhelmingly ahead of offensive lines in the NFL right now, especially the 49ers offensive line. Hasn't been able to block the bull rush consistently, especially when Trent Williams has been hurt. So pass protection is at a significant disadvantage. Because of that, the 49ers, and not just the 49ers, you're looking at many teams around the National Football League. You're looking at the Chiefs. You're looking at the Cleveland Browns have Deshaun Watson now, obviously. You're looking at Lamar Jackson with the Ravens. You see quarterbacks who can extend the play, who can escape the rush, who can help the offensive line out a little bit. And that's not a trend by accident. That's something that you need. And of course, the Bills and Josh Allen might be the prototypical example with which to view this, because Josh Allen and the Bills, well, I think it was George Kittle. I'm going to tight end you tomorrow. George Kittle has drawn the comparison between Josh Allen and Trey Lance to see where the 49ers would like to develop. So Russell Wilson overcame a lot of poor pass protection in Seattle. He was derailed by poor pass protection in Seattle. You need both. It's not a black or white thing, right? You need to have good enough pass protection, but you probably also, given the fact that the defensive linemen in the NFL are wreaking such havoc right now, you probably also need a quarterback who could buy a few extra seconds on his own. So both are needed if you want to win a Super Bowl. Steven, so tired of having a sliver of the team by the end of the year. What changes enacted this year to alleviate the injury bug? Well, last year I would have to say the 49ers did much better than in 2020. They had decently full arsenal by the end of the season. Now, they didn't have Jason Verrett, who was hurt in week 1. They didn't have Mike McGlinchey, who was also hurt earlier in the season. I think that was week 9 against Arizona. Obviously, Trent Williams was playing on a high ankle sprain that he later said he shouldn't have been playing on. So the 49ers weren't fully healthy, but neither were the Rams, right, who are missing Robert Woods, torn ACL. At a certain point, football is football, and you're not going to be on the 20th game of the season. The 49ers played 20, a franchise record last year. They played an NFL record 12 road games. You're not going to be that far down the line without a single player being injured, right? Somebody's going to be hurt. Likely a handful is going to be hurt. They're probably going to be on IR, done for the season, and that's why depth is so important. So from an overall injury standpoint, I thought the 49ers acquitted themselves well in 2021. The issue there was they started 3-5, and then they put themselves in a hole as far as the standings went, to where they had to win road game after road game after road game with no bye late in the season. They just ran out of gas down the stretch against the Rams. So the key, in my opinion, is to get a bye, because then you could heal up later. And then you could also have some rest for the depth guys who will be replacing the inevitably injured guys to make it all the way. So I think the 49ers didn't do terribly with the injury bug in 2021. More here. Lance will be as good as his OL offensive line allows him to be. He can still be good enough if the offensive line is decent. If they're subpar, that'll definitely affect his play. Absolutely. I mean, I fully agree with that. But, I mean, you have the legs for a reason, right? You have the legs to expand your repertoire and raise the potential of your level of play. Will Shanahan keep 4 or 5 running backs on the roster for injury precaution and depth? I think he's going to keep 5. He usually does. That includes Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback, and then you stash one on the practice squad. These guys get hurt. These guys are bigger, I think, on average this year than they have been in the past. Maybe that will help the 49ers from an injury standpoint. Tyrion Davis-Price, 220 plus. Jordan Mason, undrafted free agent out of Georgia Tech. He's 222 pounds. We'll see if he can crack the roster. More likely he cracks the practice squad. 49ers are going to try to get physical. They're going to try to get downhill. And they also hope those bigger bodies alleviate some of the injury concerns. But that running back position, that's going to have to be strength in numbers for the 49ers. All right, any more questions? If you have any, do not hold them in, because you're going to have to forever hold your silence at this point. If you're just coming in, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to have a ton more 49ers content as this week and this month progresses. I promise you I'll bridge this gap before the start of training camp better than anyone. That's my promise. Why don't we say that? The 49ers obviously are very tied into Tight End U out here in Nashville. That's going to be tomorrow. George Kittle hosting it out here in the heat at Vanderbilt. I will be at Tight End U, so make sure you hit that subscribe button now for some content from there. We're going to be talking Trey Lance. We'll be talking Jimmy Garoppolo, potential trades. We'll be breaking down the entire 53-man roster as this offseason continues. So this is on the agenda. Tight End U tomorrow. Tune in for that. This has been a video talking Trey Lance and time to throw. Hope you enjoyed it. Sub now, like it now, and I'll do one more bonus question since it looks like 4 people are rushing to get their questions in at the very end. What trade capital do the 49ers have on the linebacker squad? Well, Azeez Al-Shaair and Dre Greenlaw are both good linebackers you can potentially trade, but I think you want 3 good linebackers, right? You have Warren Burks, who's going to be a reserve. He's the 4th linebacker, special teams player. If you're really going for it, if you're the 49ers, though, you want to have all 3. You could be special if you have Fred Warner, Azeez Al-Shaair, and Dre Greenlaw. That's why I don't think you want to trade them. Now, are they tradable players? Yes, but they're in contract years here. You can get a comp pick if one of those guys leaves next year, and I think the 49ers, in essence, that's the smart way to play it. They're on rookie deals right now, both Greenlaw and Al-Shaair. Let them play under those rookie deals. Let one of them walk, get the comp pick later on in 2023 or 24, whenever that is, and play it that way, because I don't think that the trade return for either linebacker with only 1 year left on his contract would be all too significant to weaken yourself at that position right now. Who's going to be the number 1 cornerback? That would be Charvarius Ward, the 49ers' big free agent acquisition of the offseason. Why haven't the 49ers brought in Mike Glennon? Maybe because his neck is too long. Remember Mike Glennon and that guy with a long neck? No, I'm just kidding. The 49ers like Nate Sudfeld. If you think that Mike Glennon is significantly better than Nate Sudfeld, have at it. I don't think the 49ers think that. They gave Nate Sudfeld $2 million guaranteed. They're going to see if Brock Purdy can beat him out, but I think it's most likely you got Lance starting, Nate Sudfeld, your QB2, and then Brock Purdy, your practice squad QB3 for this season. So we'll see if that indeed comes to fruition. All right, good stuff, guys. I don't know what's for dinner. That is a good question. Ate a lot of good food out in Mexico, though. Maybe I'll put some of that up on the Twitter, maybe a little YouTube show later. I try to stay away from the phone. I did one live there to cover the Jaquaski Tart situation, but other than that, we can retroactively post some of the stuff from Mexico. All right, cool. Everybody, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Take care.